watch me burn to this heart don't desire. Well, I'm a man on fire.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Slack Line full-length broadcast. You are here with JWoww.
Wow.
And the boss.
The boss is coming.
That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you.
And we are here with Alex Butler, good buddy from the Isle of Britain. Is that okay to say?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. The man I wish would narrate my life, Alex Butler. I think one day I will
I
hire
can do
you
that.
to
I'll
do
offer
that.
my services.
Okay, cool.
Nice.
Yeah, that would be great.
And you know what? He loves cameras.
He loves what?
I do
Cameras.
love cameras.
Cameras, yes.
Of all sorts.
Cinematographer, photographer, and all-around talented young man. What are you doing here?
What, in Canada?
Yeah.
Well, I just got back, actually. I was studying here, and now, after a month break, I'm back to start working, hopefully in the film industry here.
Yeah. And what's your interest there?
Well, as you've already guys mentioned, I love cameras, and so I want to start working in a camera team here in Van, try and get some more experience, some more work, enjoy myself, and have fun.
Nice.
And, why did you came here for in the first place? Like, of course, for film school, but was your intention to stay or just to?
Yeah, actually, me and my parents have moved here several times.
Oh, really?
It's a funny story, actually. We got our PRs, which is our permanent residency, back in 2007, and ever since we've been coming back and forth. But maybe it didn't work one time, and then the next it worked, but only for a shorter amount. So this is actually the third time I've moved to Canada. So this time, hopefully, it's for good.
What
Oh.
ages were you when you were here before?
Maybe like, I suppose I was 10, and then the next time I was like 13.
Okay, and how long did you spend here each time?
Oh, the first time was only maybe a couple months, and
Oh.
then the second time was about 6 months.
Okay.
When I went to school here and everything.
Oh, okay.
But it came to a point where we either had to, because my dad ran his own business back in England, and it came to the point where it was difficult for him to run it from in Canada.
Right.
And so we either had to make the decision to go back or to stay. And
So why did you come here in the first place? Sorry, maybe I missed that.
oh, well, it was actually the skiing.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
we used to go to Whistler and ski and snowboard, and then we'd
Mm.
maybe spend 7 days up there and come down here to Van for 3 days.
Oh, nice.
And we just fell in love with the city.
Yeah.
It's an amazing city.
It's true. It's pretty easy to fall in love with.
Especially
We were
in the
just
summer.
Yeah, in the summer. We were just ragging on the weather a little bit, but I had to laugh. I was like, "Oh, you're from England. How can you really care about or cry about the weather here? It's
You
kind
know
of
what?
the same,
It rains
is it not?"
so much more here than
Really?
it does in England. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And when it gets cold, it gets a lot colder.
Yeah,
here.
it's pretty chilly here sometimes for sure. We've had some rough days over the last few days.
Actually, I missed that. You guys had a lot of wind, didn't you?
Yeah, actually, I was walking through the forest, the park that's right across the street from here, and there's this huge log that was right across the pathway that was probably like, I don't know, 10, 12 feet long and 5 or 6 inches in diameter, just like broken off from one of the trees up above and had landed on the path. And I remember a story from last year when they had a windstorm and some little kid died in Surrey because a tree broke and fell on him.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, my God. I walked for the rest of the time with my head up because when you're in the trees, it seems pretty calm. And then you look up and you see them like fucking waving around. And you're like, oh, shit. Better watch. I don't want to get crushed by a fucking branch falling down. And there was also a tsunami warning
Yeah.
like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
But that was for the island more than here. But yeah, that was kind of freaky. I woke up to my dad texting me.
Yeah.
I
Same
saw
here.
a
I had the
tsunami
same
warning.
thing.
Are you okay? Where
My
are you?
sister calling me from Brazil too. Like,
Yeah, my dad from England as well.
go to a higher land. I told her, do you know that the bus that I catch to go to North Vancouver is called Highland? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm very, very up above the level.
Yeah, we're pretty safe here too as far as water level goes.
I heard it was only about 6 inches in height in the end.
Yeah, and it was all the warnings were mostly for like Tofino and stuff, which
Yeah.
is the other side of Vancouver Island.
It could go either way around, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's scary either way. I think that Vancouver itself is pretty blocked,
Protected by the island.
but
right?
protected by the
We're
island.
lucky in that sense.
Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, it's still kind of freaky to wake up to that text. And it was like 4 a.m, and I go and I sit on the toilet and
Oh, you missed it then.
yeah,
The actual wave passed at about, I think it was like 3:40 or something officially.
Mhm.
yeah.
Ah, you'd have been well dead had it been bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the
I
thing,
woke up
right?
underwater. I mean, we shouldn't laugh. This shit happens all over the place. Really, it's
Yeah.
kind of scary. But it's weird. Like we think we're pretty free from natural disasters in Canada, which we are. Like the hurricanes tend to not get this high. Sometimes the East Coast gets a little bit of one. The worst thing we get are kind of blizzards. And blizzards, like, they suck. They really suck, and people can get snowed in and that type of thing. But, I mean, that's kind of it. Like, earthquakes, yeah, Vancouver gets them sometimes. But I in my lifetime, I've never heard of Vancouver having an earthquake that actually, like, did any, like, damage.
Real damage.
Yeah.
I mean, we are on
Which
a
means we're
major fault
probably
here.
we're due for one, is what everybody talks
Well,
about. So.
maybe except for the code, right? That's what you said, like the blizzard. Because I mean, I think that
Yeah.
that alone, it's already tough, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but it's
not
something
here.
we don't think about really, because it's just part of living here.
Yeah, well, not here in Vancouver, right?
No.
It's like
but most of Canada.
whenever we have a little bit of snow here,
Oh my god,
my
everything
tropical
goes to
mind
AI.
just like snaps. I'm like, fuck, this is probably very, very difficult in a place that snows a lot. Because like, talk
It's
about
actually
that, but
easier in a place that snows a lot because it's prepared for it. You know,
Yeah,
the city has
yeah.
snow plows and stuff like that. People know what to do, how to drive. People are just prepared for it more
Yeah.
overall.
I remember the snow last year, actually. I remember somebody telling me that Vancouver City had actually sold all their snow plows to the islands
Yeah,
because
they
didn't
don't
think
have
they were
any.
going to get any.
Yeah,
it's a bad timing if they did last year though. 'Cause
yeah.
last year was like
They had a lot of
shit
snow
pile of
last year, yeah.
snow here.
I remember
That-
actually I was driving through Burnaby here and I was driving a friend's car and I was literally weaving out of cars that were falling down the hill because they just couldn't get up the hill.
Oh.
It was quite amusing.
That few weeks last year when it snowed that much, that was like what most of Canada is like through most of the winter.
Yeah.
And colder. Like it was warm here still while that was happening.
I think the lowest I got was like -7.
Yeah, that's pretty tame for the rest
For
of Canada.
Canada,
Yeah. Like Calgary's like -7 in December. Fuck yes, we're out in t-shirts. That's like a Chinook wind. But yeah, it's interesting how that works. I remember talking to somebody from Texas and how they looked at hurricanes the same way as we look at blizzards. We're like, yeah, I'll drive through a blizzard. You know, you got to get to hockey practice or whatever. Like, and they're the same way with hurricanes. Like, yeah, it's a hurricane. Like, it happens. You know, like you got to get through the day.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Still, you guys are. I think I wouldn't say lucky, but you're well prepared for those disasters, much more than third world country would be.
Of course, yeah.
Because like even I woke up to my sister calling me and I checked the messages and she was and the messages were in the newspaper, like people they were already in the shelters. I was like, wow, these people are prepared.
What, for the tsunami?
Yeah. There were
Flipping
like
heck.
people on Haida Gwaii that they were in the shelters already. Like, you know, like people are so prepared. So
Mhm.
kudos to you guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, you see, even along here, there's like disaster routes and stuff.
Disaster routes?
Yeah.
Really?
Like if there's ever, like an earthquake or major sort of issue like that, tsunami or something. This road, actually, Boundary Road that goes past my house, it's a disaster route, which means like it has to be cleared in those ways and like is used for getting, I think, like getting trucks in and out and getting people evacuated and that type of thing.
Maybe
Mm.
you could tell me one thing, actually. I've been
Sure.
wondering, are there like earthquake sirens here and things like that?
I don't know about Vancouver itself. There is on the island. Tofino
that
has
makes more
them.
sense.
but I don't know about here. Well, I mean, we didn't hear them. I didn't hear them for the tsunami, anyways.
No, they don't. Actually, they were criticizing because there were no siren
Yeah.
that went out. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like you said, like I totally missed the warning. If it actually hit,
They
I
have
would've
for
been dead.
earthquakes, but they don't have it for tsunamis.
Mm.
That's what I was reading.
And
about.
maybe it's because the tsunami isn't supposedly supposed to affect Vancouver all that much. But like places like Richmond are actually below sea level. Like,
Really? I
yeah,
didn't know that.
Yeah, it's like Amsterdam or something, right?
Oh,
so
wow.
like,
Amsterdam's something like 3 meters below sea
yeah,
level.
yeah, like most of the
Mhm.
Netherlands is. So they have like levees and stuff that stop the water from coming in, and like doesn't take much to throw those down in a tsunami type scenario. So
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. But you guys come from different places, and we want to talk about that a little bit today, because a recurring theme amongst a lot of my friends, most of which are not from this country, here in Vancouver, which I think is really awesome. But they're all like threatened to be deported, it seems.
Dreaded word,
Which is
immigration.
weird. I mean, I feel like Canada is a very open country that way, but it's actually more restrictive than like the States is and stuff as far as immigration goes.
As a Canadian, what's your vision about immigration and everything?
Yeah. I mean, I love having everybody come here from all over the world. I think it's a point of pride for Canadians to have a welcoming community, I guess, overall. I mean, Canada's a very young country, and it's built on immigrants. So for a long time, there's not really been like an actual like culture of Canada. Like for a long time, it carried more British culture, and not half of it, but a lot of it is French as well historically. And it's kind of, I think, just been in the last little while that, especially in contrast with what goes on in the U.S., that Canada started to get like a bit more of a culture about it, and like, be proud of, our differences from a place like the U.S. and England and that type of thing. And so I would like to see that more preserved, I guess, by people coming into the country. A lot of people come in and live in their own communities and don't really learn the language very well. Like I know people that have been here for like decades that barely speak
Don't mix.
English.
Yeah, I met someone last week who'd been here like 30 years.
Yeah.
And barely speaks any English.
And like that type of thing is not cool with me. Like learn the language. Like to me, it's kind of like you're coming to a different place to enjoy the freedoms and whatnot that it provides. That and you have all that. Speak your own language, do whatever you want, but like you have to also assimilate into the culture. For me, it's not about coming here and making your culture your life in a different place. It's about coming here and I mean, again, do your thing, but like be Canadian and I mean the main thing for me is learn the language, really. Like that's probably the really thing that kind of irks me is just especially here in Vancouver, a lot of times you go into a store and if you don't speak Mandarin, you can't get service, and you're kind of like, wait, this is an English-speaking country. I should be able to get service in English in my own country.
Yeah,
but
especially if there's restaurant is selling French fries or poutine.
yeah. But
Love poutine, by the way,
but something like that doesn't irk me enough to be like, go home, learn English. Fuck you. Like I don't get that. I don't understand that really.
I think the culture in Vancouver is beautiful, though. I think that the way that immigration has benefited this city is just fantastic. It's one of the main things about coming here is, for me, has been meeting so many people that I'd have never have met before. People from China, Korea, Asia, and even Brazil and Mexico. And I've learned so much about so many different cultures being here. I think it's beautiful. I really enjoyed it.
This is really cool. We can we actually make a web of friends that we probably wouldn't make anywhere else.
Absolutely.
Like maybe in some countries, but here is pretty amazing.
It's
how
true.
How can you like?
Yeah, and I love how it grows us, not just as people, but just as like
as a city,
as
a whole.
And and individually it grows us as like, our field of influence of just people and places that we know and can potentially go and have hospitality in and that type of thing,
sure.
which is really, really cool. Like, I think that that's one of the main kind of bonuses of just friendships from anything is just like, hey, yeah, like I had almost not a free trip, but we only had to pay for our transportation on a 2.5 week trip through Europe purely because we knew people that had like houses and stuff over there. They're just like, yeah, use our house, go stay at our place or whatever. You know, it's so awesome to make those types of connections with people and talented people. And just awesome
for example, I mean, I went to Mexico in July, and all I had to do was pay for my flight. And that was it.
Have you ever been to Mexico?
Yeah. I went to Mexico City.
Okay.
Amazing place.
Cool.
Astonishing though, the difference between the rich and the poor there. The economic gap is astonishing. Yeah. I think the minimum wage in Mexico is something like 56 pesos an hour. I mean, not an hour, a day, which is like $3.
Oh,
it's
yeah, it's
nuts.
less than that. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Fuck, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh,
but
man.
also, of course, it's not enough, barely enough to survive. But also the cost of living is not as high as here.
No, but I think more recently it's been becoming more expensive. I think, we have a friend called Barbara, and she was saying that since she's been back, she thinks it's definitely become more expensive.
Wow.
And
that's just like a year.
Yeah, and that's a year. And even then, the minimum wage has not increased.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that type of thing takes forever to do that. I was just watching a thing today on, lagging effects from like the Reagan administration in the US, and how you're still seeing how like the wage level didn't keep up with the actual level of growth of the economy, and like we're still all kind of boned that way. I was talking to Jordan about that similarly because he's from Mexico City too, and he was saying how he thinks that places like Canada and the US are gonna go that way pretty fast if we don't start kind of fighting against the growing wealth gap. People like super high wealthy people living behind walls and that type of thing, and everything else just kind of like slums. It's not a very nice vision.
Well, as a matter of fact, I was just reading the other day in the newspaper in Brazil that the 4 richest guys in Brazil, they have the same amount of money that 100 million people.
Flipping out, that's phenomenal.
So it's like 4 people have as much as half of the country.
Yeah, man, it's pretty gross how people don't really see that level of inequality, especially people at the top. Like, they all think that they're middle class. I was talking to my dad while we were in Hawaii, and he was saying how he grew up middle class. But then tells us stories of how like him and his 4 brothers like all slept in the same bed in this house in Saskatchewan, and how they didn't have money for like certain types of equipment and that type of thing. And I'm like, then you weren't middle class, man. Like, maybe you were middle for where you were in Saskatchewan or whatever, but you were poor. Like, I'm sorry to say, like, you were poor in that scenario. And there's nothing wrong in that. And you worked your way out of it through middle class. And now, fuck, man, you're not middle class, bro. Like, we're sitting on Hawaii in our own house, completely paid for by my dad. We just had to pay for flights to get there, like you said. On the beach and that type of thing. I'm just like, this is not middle class, man. This is not middle of the road. This is not how middle people live. Yeah. And his perspective is warped on that, just from everybody thinks they're always in the middle. They're always the average. Life is just how their life is, and it's not.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on it.
Yeah. But I think going back to the point, immigration into Canada is tough.
Yeah, you guys have experienced that and have recently gone through it or still going through it. Tell us your experience there, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a bit of an unlucky situation. I have a funny story to tell about this.
Great.
As I said, I used to have a permanent residency to Canada.
Oh, right. Yeah, what happened to that?
Well, this is the funny story. So we obviously made several attempts to move here, and in the end, it's taken me a while to come back. And so just before I came, we spoke to a lawyer in England who told us that my permanent residency had expired.
Oh.
This is something I now know is absolute bollocks. A permanent
It can't
resident.
expire.
It can't expire permanent residency.
That's
you have
it's
to com-
permanent.
But you had to be living. You had
It's
to
in
be
the
living
name.
here, though. That's
No.
what I heard. No.
No, you have to. Okay, so I don't understand it fully. It's a very confusing process, but you have to spend 2 out of 5 years here for. I don't know. I think to continue with your immigration, but essentially your permanent residency card and documents never expire.
Ah.
You just maybe have to renew them, which is a much easier process because you
Okay.
already have the PR. And so I had it, and then this guy told us we had to officially renounce them if I were to come and be a student here, which is, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Okay, so the lawyer said that.
Yeah, this was a lawyer in England. So
Oh.
this is what I was officially advised, right?
Oh my god.
So I went through the process of renouncing my permanent residency. And now it's obviously come to bite me in the ass. As, I mean, I should never have done that, but I didn't know.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
I mean, yeah. I'm not being funny. It was ridiculous. It's the
Oh my god.
And so now I'm left in this situation where I have to go through all these processes for different visas, and it's difficult. Like, they're complicated. They're very specific with what they want, but what they ask you for is very vague. The website, I'm convinced, is deliberately designed to catch you out and try and make it
Weed
difficult.
people out, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
I don't know, Butler. I would disagree with you in some point. I don't think it's easy. And as I was telling you the other day, I thought about going to one of those lawyers here that help people with visa, but I don't know how they. Of course, it's based on demand, but there's not much of like a. It doesn't look like they have a pretty clear view of why do they charge the price that they charge. So like one, okay, I can do this for you. Will be $3,000. Oh, okay, well, probably he has some expenses and stuff. And then the other says $4,000. And then it's $4,500. And like, okay, where these people take these numbers from? And this is without paying any of the government tax,
The government fees.
fees that you have to pay. So I'm like, okay, that's
Oh, it's
probably
ridiculous.
demand. So I was talking to several people here, and I asked them. Well, one of them was an Englishman as well. So how do
Another
you,
Englishman?
Yeah, another.
There's more than one.
Apparently, there's a lot of people living in that island there.
Just a few of us, yeah.
And he said, no, I did it by myself. You just had to read the website carefully, do these steps, and you can do it. And I heard from more than one person that this is actually true. Like, if you go to the website and follow these steps, of course it's a pain because you have to get the freaking documents from a lot of places, but
And then if you use a Mac, half the stuff doesn't work.
Yeah. DocX and whatnot.
Yeah, it's a nightmare if you have a Mac. It's virtually impossible. You can't open the PDFs.
well,
Oh,
there's
that's a
the
pain in the
Vancouver Public
balls.
Library. You can do it there.
Oh, great. Yeah, of course.
I don't have a computer anymore. That's where I'm going to.
But even still, I find it's just, they may ask you for certain things. For example, we have friends who had been rejected from their PR because one of them was asked to provide evidence that he worked as a freelance photographer, so he provided invoices. Fair enough. I'd have thought that was good enough proof. He provided years and years of invoices.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently what the Canadian government wanted was invoices and pictures. But it doesn't say, we want the pictures as well.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very vague about what
Mhm.
proof they want. But at the same time, when it comes to handing everything in, they know exactly what they do want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I find frustrating about the website the most.
Yeah, they can be quite vague. And as you said, sometimes you pay $400,000 for a lawyer, and it saves you a lot of time. But who knows if the lawyer wouldn't make the same mistake
Exactly.
or worse. I mean, the information. What my point is, the information is out there, and I had a lot of these people actually that did APR by themselves, telling me like, okay, man, if you need some help, just come along and we can show how we did it. See that I think that's I like this kind of stuff, you know, when people try to actually help each other more than I don't know why or this should be actually a thing, you know. People should maybe gather and volunteer once a week to help people doing figure out their papers.
I would not be surprised if that type of thing exists.
I think then probably the issue with that is that legal counsel that they're seeking,
It's
and
not
then
gonna
it
be
becomes the question of if they don't get it and get rejected, then could you potentially sue for?
Well,
poor
could you
legal
sue me if
counsel?
I helped you with your PR and you didn't get it?
I mean, I
No.
suppose it's all on good faith, isn't it? And I think that's the point.
Well, you didn't pay me any money. I think the problem is when you put money on the game.
Yeah, but I mean, the point is that I've been through a hassle with it, and I'm sure you may have the same problem as well. I mean, how are you finding things?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. It puts you in a spot of in the loop of having to get jobs that you actually
Don't really want?
don't really want, or it's not a matter of wanting, but you have a training in, like we have training
Yeah.
in film or advertising or all those areas that I feel that I could be much more of a value doing this than what I'm doing right now. So you gotta you are caught up in this loop of very low scale jobs, which is I mean I don't criticize
be
people that are
grateful for
doing
the
it.
work.
I'm doing it,
Mhm.
but it's not my dream to
Yeah.
be there, you know. And it feels like you don't have too much support to get out of this. I would say even like a hole. It looks like it's a muddy area where you're like trying jobs, but they want to see your status, and your status is not quite clear yet, and you don't know, and you have to work. And if you don't, you're gonna be sent home. And if you're sent home, all the contacts that you did here for your work, your friends, you know, it's not that you're gonna. Well, I would say you will lose that.
Yeah, it's almost wasted.
You know, I mean, it's of course they are your friends, but life goes on.
yeah.
I'm not gonna be waiting here for you 2 years later. Hey, I got my PR, and then now let's do something. Let's do a film, or let's do, you know, people move on. It
Yeah.
could
Yes and
happen.
no. Yes and
It
no,
could
man.
happen,
Like,
but
people
the
move on. People
timing,
move on
man.
in like different ways and into different careers and stuff like that for sure. But like if you disappeared back to Brazil for 2 years because you had to, and we all just kept going along in our film industry stuff, and we're like a further ahead, you know, in a couple years, and maybe like actually producing films and stuff, and you came back, we would be excited. It would be awesome, you know, or we would maybe
Yeah.
be trying to move productions to you, like that. You don't.
I'd still
People
hold
people
you in
don't
my
leave
heart.
you behind
Huh?
like that.
I'd still hold you in my heart as well.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
It
man.
means
Like
a lot.
the people, you'll
But
never lose those
my
types
point,
of
my
connections.
point is, I think that, you know, we've done a year of a program here. We spent a good amount of money
Mhm.
already in this country, and
Yeah.
to be able to do this course, and I really don't see the reason why that could be ignorance of mine. But like the government wouldn't allow you to a postgraduate work permit, which is just like you're not gonna be taking jobs from other people, because as we see in this film industry right now, they need people.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like they shot themselves in the feet right now, because you know there could be a lot of people that could be of a good help, well trained, well prepared to be getting into this industry, are just like vanishing away, going to their countries, and then life goes on, and then you need more people, and then how do you do it?
There's always forces against well, why not why aren't Canadians doing those jobs, quote unquote Canadians
Mhm.
doing those jobs? That's always where the pushback is against stuff like
Yeah.
that. And so
I think the point in this case is that there aren't the Canadians to do it.
oh,
with the
totally. I
training
mean, it's the
and
same thing with
experience.
all those other industries. All the industries you're talking about working in, because you're waiting for your permanent resident status or whatever. You know, the gig economy, Uber drivers, cab drivers, all that type of stuff that are people that have better qualifications. All the pressure, all of these processes that you guys are talking about, it gets put there purely because there's a sentiment that those jobs should be given to Canadians first. When the reality is that Canadians don't want those jobs first, like you're saying, because if they did, then there would be them there, because there's a finite amount of people and people want to work. You know, there's help wanted signs everywhere, and there's people that live on the street, and you know, at the fine line in between those people are people that are employable people that can work, you know? And if you don't have a job, for the most part, I think it's because you don't want one. Like there's jobs, there's
in this country,
in
I
this
would say
country,
so.
yes. In this country, yes.
That's my
or
impression.
like if you don't have some sort of disability that's keeping you from working, including like addictions and stuff like that, then the only excuse to not have a job is because you don't want one. Because I see help wanted signs everywhere. I walk my dog down this fucking street for a mile, and I could get a job at any one of those places if you walk in and just say, hey, I have experience as a person who's not an idiot.
That's sometimes how I get a little bit of resentment out of this, you know. I mean, we just want to work, you know.
Yeah.
It's not like
I know, I feel bad for you guys
as if we were like I would just want to take the gold out of this country and go back home, like how you know, like we're not like destroying the country or anything.
No.
We want to collaborate, even
Yeah.
like paying taxes. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm
I
okay
want
with
to
that.
pay taxes.
Yeah, you know, and it's not a might be a criticism. I mean, why not? But whenever you grow up in a country like this, which is a great country and has, in my opinion, a lot of great like you guys have a great law system that it works. The country for the most part it works. Especially if you compare to a third world country. When you guys are born and live, not all of you, you know, a lot of you have other visions. Sometimes people get for granted that there are countries where it's hard to get a job.
Yeah.
It's just hard to make a living.
Yeah.
And when I go back home, I see these people that it's not that they don't want a job. There is no job.
Yeah. It's true. We don't have a perspective on that. It's like I was talking about with my dad earlier. Like we just, especially like where I'm from. Well, I mean, Calgary has seen a dip in their economy recently, but as I've grown up, yeah, I've always felt secure in my ability to get a job. And the idea that, like, I had a kid from France that was living with me for a while, and he said the same thing. Like, he came from France because there's no work. And like it kind of blew my mind. I was like, what do you mean, like, no work? Like, you can't go be like a waiter or something like that? It's like, no, there's no work.
It's not available.
This is not a job.
And you see, I just want to make this clear. It's not that I think you guys have to have this vision of. I actually think that that's the way it's supposed to be everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, like, great.
It's the ideal.
You know, there are jobs for people, and people want to work, man. People.
It's true, but we do have, you get a problem here as far as well, something happens like where I'm from in Calgary, where the oil price tanks, and a lot of these people have high-paying jobs in oil industry and stuff like that. Even like the labor jobs, I mean, they're high-paying things. It's kind of a lot like the industry here, right? Like, you can kind of go and work at a camp for a few months at a time and do like an in-and-out thing and work really hard and shitty hours and shitty work and make a lot of money doing it. But when the oil price tanked, like, a lot of these rigs get shut down, and companies like had to cut like 30% of their workforce. Like, it's a big deal. And like, there's a noticeable difference in, like, I took the train in from kind of not the suburbs, but, you know, the outer part of the city into downtown to work every day, and there was a noticeable difference in the amount of people that were taking the train over the course of, like, a few months. I was like, holy shit, like, there's probably 30% less people on this train
Oh,
at
really?
least on a constant basis. At least. And so that was kind of weird for me because, like, I had friends, my younger brother, he's a geologist. You know, they want to work in their field, right?
Mhm.
And then he comes out of school, you know, into a field that was not even that was like lucrative, not even like 2 years ago while he was in school. It was like, yeah, you want to make money in Calgary, be a geologist, get out, and like they're fucking hiring you at all over the place. And then 2 years later, he's painting houses right out of university, right? Without, you know, and he's still struggling to find a job. A lot of people are struggling to find jobs in that area, but like there's jobs in Calgary. Like, you can go work at fucking DQ, and I mean, you're not making great money, but you know, it's enough to keep you going. But the thing is a lot of times those places won't hire people like that because they'll know they'll just jump ship as soon as a good job comes up.
I think as well, especially maybe more so in the UK, but I think it comes with an issue with younger people. I think often they're too proud to work in places like this.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had friends who they wanted jobs, and there were jobs maybe at McDonald's, but they'd never have them. They'd never take them. I took a job as a barista in a coffee shop. I mean, it wasn't what I wanted to do at all.
But maybe because they didn't need to. Like,
well, no, they did.
When you don't have your mom and dad to support you or whatever,
True.
and you have to eat, man. If there's a job there, it's gonna pay your bills, dude. You're gonna do it.
Yeah,
you're gonna do it. You're not gonna starve. You're gonna work. You know.
Yeah, but equally, especially in Britain, we have such a well thought out benefit system that really most people, if they didn't want to work, really didn't have to.
Really,
I mean, it's a
take
big problem
advantage of
we
it?
have actually. Oh, hugely.
Really, hey?
It's a big problem we have in the UK. I mean, I have to say, I think with the system we have is fantastic, and it works for so many people who genuinely really need it. But I mean, there are programs in Britain about people who have like 6 children and through benefits make close to £200,000 a year.
What? Just based off their kids?
Yeah, and things like this, and they claim that they can't walk and things like this, and then in the program they're happily running around with their children. I mean, I'm not saying that's the whole system.
Yeah.
It works genuinely very, very well for those who need it. But I think going back to the point, there are people who don't want to work, and especially in the UK, they can find their way around it.
Those people, I think, though, are in such the vast minority.
True.
That it's not worth worrying about them. Like, yeah, there are going to be people that game the system in any way that you try to work it, you know, at the top and the bottom. And but I think that the people that are at the bottom are doing so little damage to the overall value of the system that it's kind of grossly worth just like, yeah, okay, fuck, like take your couple £100,000 if you want to like live like that, because most of us get pride out of working and out of being productive, you know, out of just contributing. You know, we don't get, you feel shitty if you're just sitting at home all day doing nothing. Like, you really don't feel good. Like, I've been in modes like that, and it sucks because you feel useless.
You
know?
want to be productive. You want to be a part of you know, the system's not perfect, but you want to be a part of it anyways.
Absolutely. You want to have pride in what you do, and you want to enjoy what you do, and it's going to make you happier as a result.
But you see what? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go.
But I do have to say one thing. Even working in these let's say low scale jobs, I don't know what you guys what's the term for that? Like
yeah, low scale is fine.
Unskilled labor.
Unskilled labor, sure.
Even doing this here, I have to say something is that like right now I'm delivering food from restaurants around town, and if I wanted, I could save a little bit and I could eat in each one of those restaurants that I deliver food from. This would never be possible in Brazil. A guy working in the same position that I am could never, ever. I mean, even if he's except if he saved a lot of money, be able to eat in those restaurants. So it's very sad. Like, you can see, like, people, oh, you're delivering food that you can't afford. Whereas here, I think that, there's a lot of problems. I still, you still want to move on, but it's much more fair.
I think we forget how good we have it here sometimes.
Yeah, except for the housing here, which is
astronomical.
Yeah, that's a big problem. And we can talk about that maybe afterwards and a bit more on immigration, because I want to talk about coming from England a little bit specifically.
Sure.
But maybe we can take a break.
Sure.
You can do your smoke thing, and we can
Sure.
come back here in a few minutes.
Sure.
All right, cool. We'll be right back on the
Sure.
slack line with Alex Butler.
I love comedy.
Hey, mama, I know what you need, but I never met a woman with so much greed. Hey, mama. Hey, mama, hey. Hey, mama, I've seen you around, messing with all the poor boys in this town. Hey, mama. Hey, mama, hey. You burned this whole place down just to wear the crown. What you need, but I never met a woman with so much cream. Hey, mama. Hey, mama, hey. Hey, mama, I've seen you around, messing with all the poor boys in this town. Hey, mama. Hey, mama, hey. You just to wear the crown.
back on the Slack line once again with JWoww.
Wow.
And the boss.
The boss is coming! That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you
We are here with Alex Butler, talking a little bit about cameras and the immigration process, as those relate to each other.
Very relatable.
Yeah, very relatable things.
Certainly in my life.
The only way they correlate in this conversation is that
It's through
we all
Alex
love
Butler.
cameras,
And we all love
two out of the three
Alex
of us
Butler.
have immigration issues.
Thank you. You're too kind.
Before the break, we were just chatting about how it is to get into Canada and what's it like to be an immigrant in Canada, and just a Canadian's viewpoint on people coming here.
I wanted to ask you something.
Sure.
Because it's interesting. It just not to be in the air, this immigrant, the immigrant dream of going to another country and have. I mean, you are Canadian, and you have the Canadian and the American citizenship,
Right.
which a lot of people would give a lag to
It's
have
the golden
that.
duo, really.
And my question is, how do you see your opportunities being wider than the other people? Because sometimes also immigrants get lost in this dream of leaving somewhere else, and having more possibilities. You have a lot of possibilities. How do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, for a long time, I took it for granted. I still, I've never really taken advantage of it. I've never lived in the States since I was a really young kid. I've never really had the drive to do that. Looking back on it, I probably had good advantages through, sports and stuff when I was younger that I didn't take advantage of. But I don't remember my parents really being, that informative about that part of my life. In that way, and maybe they weren't that informed about it either.
Mm-hmm.
But in the last few years, ironically, just because of being, kind of taking it for granted, I've wanted to renounce my American citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually seriously considered that and thought about it and talked to my dad about it.
But why?
Because of
Politics?
what goes on there, and I don't want to be associated with it. But
I mean, it's just a short few
exactly,
years.
Exactly. I mean, it's stupid 22-year-old Matt being in school and wanting to do something.
Give it to the man.
Yeah, stick it to the man or whatever. When I would obviously just be hindering myself, you renounce the permanent residence, right? Same sort of thing. So. And speaking with you guys has definitely given me a larger appreciation, not just you guys specifically today, but just in general with all my friends that have these issues, definitely given me a larger appreciation for the opportunities that are open to me with it.
Even for film,
especially for film.
We have a lot of even people that are from Canada that are oh no, but I want to go to LA. I mean, you have both possibilities, even opening a production company that could go both ways.
It's true. I think that my main advantage lies either there or just the fact that companies that operate in both places could probably benefit from having somebody that can live in both places without having to worry about visa issues and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, I haven't explored. And honestly, I've never really propped it up as something that was as an advantage of myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I've only ever worked in Canada and Calgary as something that didn't need me to go anywhere. And so now I definitely see more advantage in it for sure. And
Okay.
I'm definitely going to hopefully start using that here pretty quick. 'Cause LA and New York probably basically anywhere along the coasts of the US are places that I wouldn't mind living.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not too far
Not down
south on
south,
the east side.
Oh, okay.
The south on the west side is definitely nice down through LA and stuff, but going down through South Carolina and those types of places and down
You
to
don't fancy
Florida, no. But New York and Boston. I was born in Philadelphia. I'd love to go back there. I've never been there really. So
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
but yeah, that's me about with my citizenship. It's kind of been a weird road for me. So, anyways, I'd like to talk to Alex about coming here from Britain, which I figured would be easier coming from a Commonwealth country because both are under the British Commonwealth. Obviously, the British, they are the Commonwealth. But maybe that stuff is now like it doesn't make a difference anymore. Or
I mean, in some areas yes, and in some no.
Yeah.
For the vast majority of visas, it doesn't really make too much of a difference.
Okay.
Because I think the point is that the Canadian system is very fair. I think the only thing you can really do wrong in the eyes of Canadian immigration is have a criminal record.
Okay.
However, having said that, there's a visa called a working holiday, and that allows me, in particular, to come here for 2 years and work. And it's an open work permit. I can work in whatever I want as long as it's not childcare or something else.
And that's only available to Commonwealth people?
No,
Oh.
this is available for many countries. But the particular benefits with Britain and Australia and New Zealand is that they have this for 2 years over one. And also, there are only so many allocated places that they give out. So for the UK, it's 5,000. But if you're from Austria, for example, it's only 37 places.
Oh.
And that's that's a huge benefit, obviously.
Yeah.
It means that I have a much greater chance of being given a place. And that's how currently I have my visa.
Okay.
So it's been fantastic for me.
Interesting.
But there's been talk, especially with Britain leaving the EU, that connections with Canada will strengthen. And one of the big things, and positive for me, things that I've heard, is that there may become a more open immigration system between Canada and England. And so it would be a lot easier for me to obtain my permanent residency here. And even my citizenship, potentially. But obviously these are things that are still being negotiated and blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah. But I mean, there are other countries like Mexico, which, because the NAFTA agreement is being renegotiated, used to be able to get in on the working holiday. And now they can't at all.
Oh, really?
But yeah, it's being postponed until NAFTA is
It's
firmed
sorted
up.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that stuff going on down there. Fuck. It's such a mess, man. It's such a disaster. It makes me it affects everything, right? Like, you know, people trying to get into Canada from totally different countries are affected by craziness happening
Oh, absolutely.
in the United States. Like, it's just, it drives me nuts.
Just some crazy guy with a pen
Yeah.
can do a lot of damage.
You know, it's interesting actually you bring up the citizenship, because part of me has flipped almost completely in the other in the last year or so. Well, I got a tattoo that has a star on it and a leaf that signifies both of them. But also I thought maybe I could be the first Canadian president of the United States, because I was born there, and so technically I am eligible to be president of the United States.
I
could
don't
be
know
fun.
if they especially today, they would like someone from other nationality being their president. I don't know. I don't know. It's just a hint.
I think there'd be a large contingent of people in the U.S. that'd be like, all right, let the Canadians deal
A
with
sensible Canadian.
Yeah. A sensible Canadian.
Sure,
from
because
the outside.
sure, because they really choose sensible people to be on the stage
Oh, that's
there.
the main thing now.
It's going to be the next overcorrection, you know? This was an overcorrection back from, you had the black guy, and now all the racists got their thing, and so now you're going to get the overcorrection to all the people that just want to move to Canada are just going to turn
So you have a
the
chance.
U.S. into Canada.
Or maybe you guys just
Carson 2032.
nice, man. Just you know what?
You get
Just
my vote.
remodel the
Alright.
border.
Yeah,
you know,
I will.
The new Canadian
will.
border is with Mexico.
I will. I'll just
Just
split.
get a little piece of land.
No, I'll just
Do what the British did and just claim this.
Yeah.
it'll
So
be
you know what? This little piece of land here below us might be handy for.
it'll look North America will look just like a big vagina.
Yeah.
In the middle of it can just be the United States of America, and everything else will be Mexico.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting plan. I would certainly vote for you, especially if I got my my permanent residency.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. I don't know. It's an interesting thing.
Culturally, do you think that both countries are very different. Like, what's your?
Yeah, they are. You don't see it because obviously it's not visible, and the cities and everything look very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
But it's on a person-to-person basis.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you spend enough time with just like an American, you can feel kind of the, for lack of a better term, like aggressiveness
Mm-hmm.
that an American kind of innately has, just more kind of let's get this going kind of, I don't know, it's a weird sort of quality to kind of define, whereas Canadians will just have, a much more like, stereotypical apologetic sort of demeanor to the way that we do things.
I get, well, I can give a little bit of the input as well, because I live in the U.S. for a year.
Mhm.
I think you know that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I live in Missouri for a
in
year.
Texas. Oh, I thought it was Texas.
No, unfortunately.
Or you
it was
have
Missouri.
family in Houston or something, right?
No.
Friends in Houston?
No.
No?
No.
What the fuck am I
That's
thinking?
the other
Anyways,
Brazilian.
go on.
And I remember people there being so close to the fact that I was a foreign in the school. I was the only foreign people in the school. That, of course, if you're so different, they're gonna bully you, right? And whereas here in Canada, I mean, I think I had this issue once of like someone being
Yeah.
aggressive towards.
Well,
foreign
you
people,
also
but, like, not like it's not even a thing, It's not even a thing. Like when people get mad at you, it's not even like you're fucking foreign. Like like you'd hear that in the U.S. like much easier than here. At least I did.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, racially, it's definitely that is a big issue. I mean, we have issues here with Native Americans, a lot of that type of stuff. Not so much here. Like, that's the thing, is like even being in Vancouver is a warped view on Canada.
I was going to ask about this actually. Do you think that maybe your perception of Canadians has changed over the past couple of years? Because I found that, I mean, certainly from my experience, I think the more inland to Canada you go, the more like the Americans the Canadians become. And I think
that's
maybe
overall true. But even like the most conservative areas of Canada, which is like where I'm from, it would be considered the most liberal parts of the U.S. Like, nobody's arguing. Well, there's some arguments for private healthcare in Alberta, where I'm from. But nobody really takes it seriously. Alberta's just kind of they want business to be drawn there because the oil market is there, and so a lot of the policies revolve around making the oil market better, which tend to revolve around being more conservative as far as like environmental policies and that type of thing is concerned. If you talk to people that are from Vancouver, you would think that about people from like Calgary and Alberta in general, you'd think that it was like red state, like fucking banjo or something. But it's not as bad as people here would have you believe. There's no like Joao said, there's nobody shouting at people for being gay or any sort of nationality or anything like that. But there is still like traces of just like, prairie-ness, farm boyness, tough guyness,
big trucks.
Yeah, big trucks. People, I think that the Canadian identity partially comes a little bit from that. Is like this sort of it's kind of what I want to make this hockey movie about, actually. It's kind of this sort of innate get up and keep going ness, brush it off, walk it off, like it doesn't really hurt kind of thing. That gets ingrained in people just from like toughing it through the winter and whatever, like you got to suck it up. And that's just kind of the way that overall Canadians sort of approach things. And I don't know, like you said, as you get a little bit more inland, it gets more conservative ideologically.
But in practice, not so much.
Yeah, like the healthcare system is born out of Saskatchewan, which is like the most deep mid state or a deep mid province as you can be, and they're one of the more socialist parts of the country too. So yeah, it kind of goes up and down, and the conservative nature of Alberta, like I said, is more centered around the economy and the oil market there than it is anything else. But yeah, overall, like you said, the racial tensions they're just not really here. But like we kind of pretend that they're not in a weird way, but they are, like, very much so for the native peoples. Like,
okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a lot of history with the natives that seems to get shrugged off. From
in
what
all of
I've
North
seen.
America, really.
I don't really understand it so much, but from what I do, it's no one ever talks about it, and it's not really written anywhere. But
yeah, like Canadian history,
horrific.
we grew up learning about it, and I mean, it's not framed in the way that it should be framed.
Mm-hmm.
At least where I went to school, like you learn about, you know, how they tried to assimilate the natives and how you know, they tried to bring them into these residential schools, and you learn that these schools were not overall a good thing, and that, you know, disease and alcoholism and stuff like that Europeans brought here ultimately took out the natives. Excuse me. But obviously it's much more than that, and it's just purely imperialist genocide. And I think there's only like 10% of the total like it dropped to like 10% of the original population, like within 20-30 years of European settlers getting here or something. So that might be like way off, but either way, there's not a lot of them left. Yeah, and we don't really talk about it very much. You're right.
No.
It's kind of strange. Part of it, I think, is that I mean, there's just a complacency with it on sort of both sides of the coin. Like, there's not a lot of, I mean, I don't want to say there's not a lot of like push or protest for necessarily help to the native community, because I mean, some people that have power in the native community, like chiefs and stuff like that, tend to try to make it, you know, kind of run like small sort of dictatorships, you know, like they're the ones how money gets funneled through all the reservations and that type of thing. And depending on who you have as a chief, you could have a beneficial reservation or one that's just like in shambles. But there's a really tough conversation around, well, if you really want to like just equalize everything, you have to get rid of the reservation. Like, the reservation can't be a thing because it's not an equalized thing, right? But at the same time, you can't get rid of the reservation because these are their lands, these are their historical places. Yeah, but they're not even, because they're places that we, quote unquote, gave them. They're not even their original lands necessarily, right?
Well,
and so
if you think about, everything was theirs, right?
Yeah. Well, but this is the problem, not the problem. The issue when we first came was that the native culture is about no land ownership at all. They don't consider the land theirs. They consider it everybody's. So the idea of like buying and selling land was not a thing. There was no ownership of it. We use it to grow and sustain ourselves, kind of thing, was what their whole culture was about. And so it was the idea that, no, now you can't come here and we will shoot you if you do. Like, it was not a concept to them, you know?
But I think that at one point they had to fight with the same weapons that they were fighting with, right? I mean, if we have this game where if we play a game that I have, I don't know, 5 coins and they are not really mine, and I just share with people, and I don't know, and then you come and get and say that's mine now, then it's not everybody's else. Like, it's yours, you're claiming. But it was with me before. I don't know. I can't say much because Brazil really didn't do great with our First Nations.
Well, it's the same thing all over the planet. Like, it's what imperialism was. You know, same thing in Africa, same thing in India. Like imperialistic fucking British people for the most part came
the
in
Portuguese, the
yeah,
Spanish.
for the most part. Portuguese, Spanish, French, like it was all, I mean, it's Europeans. And they came in and either through like purposeful violence or through things like, you know, spreading disease, which is like the spreading of disease and just like the death of kind of the native peoples of a place is a weirdly natural part of like migration, like of any species. And it's kind of weird that we're like conscious enough to realize that this is something that happens, and we try to like, hopefully you try to stop it in retrospect, you know, like, 'cause we can think about, we can remember, hey, remember how awful that was when we did that? Let's not do that again. But I mean, the tough part comes with like reparations of these things, 'cause how do you apologize for that? How do you make up for that? You know, part of the problem, like everybody talks about, well, let's just, you know, give them a little bit more money, and they'll sign for a little bit more money, or, you know, give them a little bit more land here or whatever. None of that really solves an issue of
You create
hundreds of
another
years.
sometimes, right?
Yeah, and none of it solves an issue of hundreds of years of like oppression and stuff like that, which is an issue all over the place. But I'm actually curious about that from an England perspective, because like England doesn't really like they don't really have native peoples, do they? Like what?
We've been conquered a few times,
Yeah.
actually, which is kind of ironic.
Okay.
By the Normans, by the French,
Okay.
by the Vikings,
Right.
bit of everything really.
So, but like the Celts, is that like the
Celtics.
original Celtics?
You know what? I don't even know.
No?
I believe so.
Do you guys study that at all?
No, it's not even in
Like how far back do you go in your own history?
like Henry VIII, and that's about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, going back to the natives, Matt, I don't understand enough about it to really say anything too
Yeah.
much. But I went to visit the Anthropology Museum here in Van the other week, and you know what? It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
The artwork and the craftsmanship
is.
that goes into their culture, I think, is fantastic.
It is, yeah.
And I see that it is just dying. It's become less and less, and I think it's a great shame. I think some of the craftsmanship and artistry that goes into these pieces is just beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. It really is, especially on the coast and the coastal tribes and the like the totem poles and that type of thing. They're really cool. Like the tribes that were mostly in the prairies, I think were more nomadic than tribes along here. And they just kind of moved as the buffalo moved and that type of thing. So it was all kind of like teepee based and that type of thing. So there's not, I don't know how much there was left of like artifacts of people that lived in the native culture at that time, you know, because they didn't really have many standing structures like the totems and that type of thing out here.
It's just something that came to me. That's a very touchy and complex
It
issue.
is. It is.
But
Absolutely.
like
It's important though.
if you look at it, we are discussing something that is not old at all. I mean, in the 60s and 50s, they were making these bang bang films, which the people from First Nations were the bad guys.
Yeah.
So, like the vision, they pretty much got from the 1900s or the 1800s, and they just applied to the new century. And I don't know, it wasn't until maybe 1970 we start, the social movement start to changing the mindset about those stuff. But that's pretty new.
Yeah.
I mean, that's totally insane how even slavery
It's not that old.
It's not that old. In Brazil, the last year was 1888, which is 100 and something years ago.
Yeah.
Which is nothing for history.
Yeah.
You know, and so our story of prejudice and it's pretty new.
Yeah, it's not over. It's far
No.
from over, man. Like,
In fact, I think I was reading something the other day that was saying that there were a load of rights that natives didn't have up until maybe even the early 2000s. It's that recent. I mean, I don't know the specifics of it at all, but
honestly, I don't know specifics like that. very well at all either.
I
which
know-
is a sad thing. Like, we just don't.
I know in Brazil something that really caught my attention nearby where my parents live in the area. There used to be a lot of First Nations, and of course, they made a reserve, but it was not their land. And that's the thing about First Nations in Brazil. It's kind of similar. They had the connection with the land that it was theirs, and it's not because this land is even bigger that is better, but it's not the same river, it's not the same trees.
Right.
There, it's not like that.
Right.
In our perspective of like Western perspectives, it's like, why not? It's just a bigger land. You can do more stuff with that. It's even better. For them, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. The connection was with the other land. But anyways, we were talking about one of the rights, and I remember going through driving to my parents' city, and we stopped into a gas station in Brazil. This is funny in Brazil because you can even get liquor in a gas station. Well, in the States, I think you can too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But anyways, and the gas station was nearby where the reserve started, and we had to drive through the reserve, which actually state road that cuts the reserve. But before entering the reserve in this last gas station, it was a sign that it was prohibited to sell alcohol to people of the First Nations. And that just astonished me.
Wow.
I mean, because of course there's a problem that is the alcoholism amongst them. But if you prohibit someone because of their race to do something, that is just fucking racism.
Yeah.
That's terrible. This was like 3-4 years ago.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So.
Or actually, another astonishing thing that I found out the other day is the boil advisories of the water here, even in Vancouver. A lot of the First Nation communities don't have clean drinking water.
Yeah.
They have to boil everything that
Really?
they use. Oh,
See, that's a
it's
tough thing
astonishing.
because I don't know what the payments are to each reservation and how that all works. Like, I have no idea how that system works and who gets what. But kind of like the idea of the reservation is that you have your land, we give you this like lump sum every year or whatever, and you do what you want on your land. Like, they make their own rules, they make their own laws about who can buy cigarettes and alcohol and all that type of stuff, and you can't, like, you're not, like, we're not really allowed to go on the native lands. Like, they can like kick us off, and they can, like, they have their own police and all that type of thing.
Really, they have their own police?
Yes and no. Like the
I thought it was a joint police force.
yeah, like the royal the RCMP I think can go in there, but the city police can't. And like they have like sheriffs and stuff. Again, like like you can see how ignorant we are of it.
Yeah, I have friends who are natives, and honestly, I'm ashamed that I really don't know more.
Yeah.
About their culture.
Yeah.
And about maybe some of the issues that they face.
Yeah, and it's just tough because there's this history of trying to assimilate them in a terrible manner, which was these residential schools, which brought kids from the native communities into like white schools, and there was a lot of abuse amongst like nuns and the people that ran these schools against native kids. So there's this history there of an improper assimilation, that any sort of talk about like abolishing the reservations and trying to make reparations on an individual basis to the people that are still around, and like trying to I don't know, like trying to bring the cultures together in a way, like where's the answer in that? Like the art is a main part of it, I think, as far as like, well, the culture, sadly, it's not there anymore. It's like the Mayan culture in Mexico or something, or like any of these ancient cultures, ancient cultures in Greece and stuff that don't really exist anymore, except in history. And yes, like the Europeans coming here, including, my own ancestors, had a hand in that. And like, that's something that we can never really change. Like, it happened. So how can we move forward by trying to by trying to keep it alive through, you know, things like anthropology museums and stuff like that, and through trying to incorporate, you know, or again, like to say something like trying to incorporate them in the government as much as possible, it innately is kind of like a racist thing to say, because like I like those words leave my mouth and I'm like, well, no, they should, like, just like any people, they should want to involve themselves in any capacity that they want to involve themselves. I don't really look at it like that.
But I think maybe what you're trying to say here is that now the damage is done, right?
Yeah, it's long done. Well, it's not done. Like it was done a long time ago, and it's tough to.
And there has to be ways to deal with the damage now, you know. And
yeah,
thinking about that.
Well, I mean, like what I'm trying to say is that because there's this kind of sour feeling of how to assimilate people together, it becomes kind of even a touchy subject to even suggest, like, well, I don't know, like what can we do? Can we try just like a sweeping rewrite of all history of Canadian history books? Like that might be a start, right? Of trying to tell the real story of how it happened to the younger generation or something like that.
There might be
Not
well,
that
I haven't read any of the Canadian history.
Yeah, and to be honest, like we always considered Canadian history really boring. We were like, man, Canadian history sucks. Like, there's no fucking nukes or missiles or anything. Like, we want to learn about, you know, the Civil War and that type of stuff. You know, we never really had shit like that. But we never really got into the actual interesting and, like, you know,
meaningful
subjects. Meaningful parts of it, really. Like, we got into we talked about the explorers and the people who came here and, you know, the few, like, battles that were fought between the French and the British for, you know, Upper and Lower Canada and stuff like that. Bloody French. But, like, yeah, you know, we could really stand to have greater lessons in how all that stuff went down. Another problem is a lot of it wasn't really kept on record, right? Like, the people that controlled the history of that time were the people that were doing these terrible things. And so, you know, even somebody like Christopher Columbus still has a day in the U.S. And I don't know if you guys ever I don't know if you guys ever seen the John Oliver little thing on him and like how is this still a thing, Christopher Columbus Day? We'll watch it after, but it's astonishing to think that they have a day to celebrate Columbus and even still consider him the first person in North America. He didn't even land in North America, for one thing. He landed in the Caribbean. And Vikings were here like way before, and all he did was like murder a bunch of people in the Caribbean, and we call him like it's
founder of
it's kind of fucked up. And even knowing this stuff now, they still, I mean, textbooks haven't been updated and all that type of stuff. And why are we still learning from textbooks anyways? Like, why are we learning from 20-year-old textbooks? That makes no sense. Information has been updated so quickly, but yeah, maybe that's where we'll leave it for today. We always get down on some really depressing subjects.
We'll finish up with Christopher Columbus.
We'd like to thank Alex Butler for stopping by and lending us his beautiful, righteous, proper English voice. All of those.
Thanks for having me, guys. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me.
This has been the Slackline. Thank you to anybody out there who might be listening. I'm too lazy to list off all the social media accounts right now. So this has been JWoww.
Wow.
And the boss.
The boss is coming! That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you
I love
you guys
cameras.
next time.